Om Gyanam Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today's topic, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, chapters 15 and 16. So until now, we've been discussing how to execute devotional service, how to execute bhakti, and now in these chapters, Rupa Goswami is describing how we can become swept away with bhakti, how we can become completely inundated with devotional service. Why? So that such that we are spontaneously attracted to Krishna. So why can we do spontaneous devotional service? Because we are spontaneously attracted to Krishna and to devotional service. So this is Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So what is Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti? This chapter describes Ragatmika Bhakti, the spontaneous devotional service of the eternal residents of Vrindavan. Ragatmika, spontaneous bhakti, is of two types. So Raganuga Bhakti is bhakti that follows in the footsteps of the bhakti of the spontaneous devotional service of the eternal residents of Vrindavan, which is called Ragatmika Bhakti. So the bhakti of the residents of Vrindavan is called Ragatmika Bhakti. And this Ragatmika Bhakti is of two types. Although here Prabhupada uses the term Raganuga for both the perfect spontaneous devotees and those who follow them, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita he uses the term Ragatmika for the perfected devotees and Raganuga for those who are following them and aspiring to be like them. So in this chapter, you'll see how Srila Prabhupada uses this term Ragatmika for both the sadhaka and for the siddha, the sadhaka and for the siddha devotees. That is, the devotees who are on the path of spontaneous love of devotion and those who are the eternal residents of Vrindavan. However, it's possible that that is a typo. Some devotees feel that in the transcription process, the editors may have put Ragatmika down rather than Raganuga Bhakti, or Srila Prabhupada is just using that term in a more general way. But in either case, in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, Srila Prabhupada talks about Raganuga Bhakti as sadhana bhakti, as the second part of sadhana bhakti. The first being Vaidhi sadhana, the second being Raganuga sadhana. And the Ragatmika refers to the devotees who are the perfected devotees, the devotees in the spiritual world, whom the Raganuga Bhakta tries to emulate. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada makes a distinction between these terms. And so for the purposes of our course and our lecture, we will distinguish these terms as Ragatmika and Raganuga. So Raganuga is a stage of sadhana. Once our Vaidhi sadhana bhakti becomes perfect meaning on the stage of Nishtha, we become fixed in it, then it gradually turns into Raganuga bhakti, and there are certain things that make it become Raganuga bhakti, and those are the things that we will discuss today. Rupa Goswami defines Ragatmika bhakti, the devotion of the residents of Vrindavan, as spontaneous attraction for something while completely absorbed in thoughts of it, with an intense desire of love. The types of Ragatmika bhakti are sensual attraction and relationship. The attraction can be lust, fear, and envy, service, affection, and kinship. So in any of these ways, one can practice Ragatmika bhakti. That attraction can be of all of these types: lust, fear, envy, service, affection, and kinship. While the gopis can be characterized as lusty, this word indicates their extreme desire for Krishna and is the only word we can understand. Actually, lust is to satisfy one's own senses, and the gopis' feeling is to satisfy Krishna's senses. Such a pure desire to satisfy another's senses is not found in the material world. It's very interesting. Just this morning, I was listening to a class from Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada in that class was saying how in this material world, every relationship, in any relationship, a person is in that relationship to satisfy their own senses. He was saying there's no relationship in the material world in which one is not trying to satisfy one's own senses. Every relationship in this material world is characterized by the desire to gratify or make oneself happy. And spiritual senses and spiritual gratification means trying to satisfy another's senses, that is Krishna's senses or the senses of Krishna's devotees. And that is characterized as pure love. But in this world, we don't experience that. And so therefore, we have no experience of it. We don't know what love is. So the most intense experience in this world is lust. And so therefore, the gopis' love for Krishna is sometimes described as lust, to show the intensity of it, to show their attraction for Krishna. The most intense attraction is called lust in this world. So their intense attraction to Krishna is characterized as lust, but it is pure love, not to be found in this world. Also, Prabhupada was saying in the lecture, it was so nice lecture this morning. It was just a lecture, a normal Bhagavatam lecture that Srila Prabhupada was giving. And his main topic was of fear, that how for the devotee there's no fear. But in that he was also saying how in the spiritual world, there's no past and no future. There's only the present. And because there's only the present, he said there's only feelings. The whole spiritual world is just about feelings, intense feelings for Krishna, intense feeling for Krishna. And he said that right now we cannot imagine what that's like, no past, no future, because past time means some past, some present, some future. Otherwise, how can you do pastimes? So there is some spiritual sense to that of past, present, and future. But Srila Prabhupada says we cannot understand that right now because actually in the spiritual world, there's only the present. And that present is full of feelings, enriched with spiritual feelings for Krishna. While demons such as Kansa and Shishupal achieved the same destination through their anger and envy directed at Krishna, this indicates that they achieved the spiritual sky. Demons and impersonalists generally attain the Brahmajyoti, while devotees enter the Vaikuntha or Vrindavan pastimes. So we have seen how Prabhupada will say in this chapter how one can reach the Lord through any of these feelings: lust, envy, what was it here? Lust, fear, envy, service, affection, and kinship. And these are the examples, like Shishupal and Kansa, who, although were demons, because they're constantly absorbed in thought of Krishna, in those feelings of envy and fear, they still reach the Lord. However, Prabhupada clarifies that this does not mean that we should try to reach the Lord by being envious of him. Because we also find examples of demons who are envious of the Lord. In fact, we see them all the time, who don't reach the Lord. So being envious of the Lord is not a qualification to reach the Lord. But rather what Narad Muni here is saying, and then Srila Prabhupada is saying, Rupa Goswami is saying, is that even if some or the other, we can attach our mind to the Lord, even through envy, we will still go back to Godhead. So the key thing is to be continuously absorbed in thought of Krishna. And if we can do it by being envious of Krishna, we're still very nice. But being envious of Krishna is not the point. The point is to always think of Krishna. And so we are actually encouraged to think of Krishna out of love and service. That is actually our goal, that it must be done through love and service. Evidence of the purity of the gopis' love is given in the example of the strictness of Lord Chaitanya, who gave the gopis as the highest example. Kubja is given as an example of someone whose love for Krishna is almost pure desire. So the gopis' love for Krishna, that is completely pure, and Lord Chaitanya showed this by his own example. He was a perfect sannyasi. He was such a strict sannyasi that no woman could come even near him. He would not even see the form of a wooden doll, form of a woman. So even a small doll, if it's in a female form, he would not see the doll. That's how strict he was. Yet he was always praying to have the mercy and the association and the guidance of the gopis. So how is that possible? Why then would he do it? If he's completely above all lust, why would he try to follow in the footsteps of the gopis? He did that to show that the gopis are above all lust. Their feeling of love for Krishna is so deep that even the greatest sages and sannyasis cannot rise to that level. It is just their, so to say, external form that seems like boys and girls, Krishna and Radha. But actually their heart, their feelings are that of the surrendered to sage. Now, the example of Kubja is given because when Krishna goes to Mathura, one lady Kubja becomes very, very attracted to him. And she actually becomes attracted to Krishna out of feelings of lust. Krishna is like this beautiful, beautiful young man. And she is a hunchback lady and she wants a husband. And she thinks, Krishna is so beautiful. And so she actually approaches Krishna out of lust. The gopis is just apparent lust, but hers was actually out of some lust was there. But as soon as she comes in contact with Krishna, that lust turns into pure love. And so the acharyas are telling us that we can approach Krishna out of lust. If he looks like the most beautiful young man to us, we can approach him out of lust. But if we approach him, then that lust will turn into love. So this is a short chapter, chapter 15, and this is describing that how the love of the residents of Vrindavan is of a pure transcendental level, and how we should become attracted to Krishna, and one can follow in the footsteps of all of these different devotees, including Kansa and Shishupal. We can be attracted in any of these ways, but the main thing is to become attracted to Krishna in a particular relationship. If we are continuously thinking of Krishna, even out of envy, we will eventually reach him. But of course, we should do it favorably. As we had discussed, pure devotional service is bhakti, done favorably. So eventually, we may start with envy, but we will have to become favorable to the Lord in order to get pure devotional service. Now, chapter 16. This is the main chapter. And now we get deep into how to develop the process and the practice of Raganuga Bhakti. How do we come? We have maybe often wondered about this. How do we come from the platform of pushing ourselves to do devotional service to the platform of spontaneously wanting to love Krishna? How do we come to the platform of loving Krishna like the gopis do, like Queen Kunti did, just being naturally attracted to him? And that process, that method is described in this chapter. The process of Raganuga Bhakti, spontaneous devotional service in practice, is described. Its eligibility, how to become eligible to do it, its categories, and its practices. So in chapter 2, we talked about sadhana bhakti. And there, Prabhupada mentioned that there's two types of sadhana bhakti. Another part of sadhana bhakti is called Raganuga. Raganuga refers to the point at which, by following the regulated principles, one becomes a little more attached to Krishna and executes devotional service out of natural love. For example, a person engaged in devotional service may be ordered to rise early in the morning and offer arti, which is a form of deity worship. In the beginning, by the order of a spiritual master, one rises in the morning and offers arti, but then he develops real attachment. When he gets this attachment, he automatically tries to decorate the deity and prepare different kinds of dresses and thinks of different plans to execute his devotional service nicely. Although it is within the category of practice, this offering of loving service is spontaneous. So the practice of devotional service, sadhana bhakti, can be divided into two parts, namely regulative and spontaneous. So Srila Prabhupada here has given such a wonderful example that none of us, initially, we don't like to rise 4 in the morning. When we wake up early in the morning, we feel very, very tired. We get a stomach ache. We, feel like groggy and this and that, and we want to sleep and, enjoy our life, enjoy our night. So this is like the stage I am at. It's very difficult to rise early in the morning. But as one rises early in the morning, one then gradually develops an attachment to that. And then one loves getting up in the morning and seeing the deity form and worshiping the deity and doing Mangalarti like this. So the form of the Lord and the service to the Lord in the morning, doing the Mangalarti, becomes a natural part of our life, and we become attracted to it. And then from sadhana, Vaidhi sadhana, we come to the platform of Raganuga. One is performing the same sadhana, but one is doing it not because one has to do it, not because the scriptures or the rules and regulations or the spiritual master is telling us to do it, but one is doing it now out of a natural attraction to that activity in devotional service. And this is why Raganuga is still sadhana bhakti, because the practices remain the same, but the motivation of those practices changes, meaning that now the motivation is a spontaneous attraction for those same practices. So one devotee may be getting up for Mangalartik and maybe on the stage of Vaidhi sadhana. And another devotee is getting up for Mangalartik, and that devotee is on the stage of Raganuga, doing the same thing, but out of a spontaneous attraction for Krishna. Spontaneous love of Krishna, as exhibited by the Vrishnis and denizens of Vrindavan, is eternally existing in them. In the stage of devotional service, where regulated principles are followed, there is no necessity of discussing this love, for it must develop of itself at a more advanced stage. So Srila Prabhupada is saying that this spontaneous love, Ragatmika Bhakti, is present there in the residence of Vrindavan. However, at the stage of practice, one does not need to discuss this love, because one is simply not on that level. One is not on that stage to discuss these things. And it will turn mainly into speculation, like, oh, Mother Yashoda did this or that, and we really don't know. But this stage develops naturally. It itself develops naturally on the higher stage. Again, if we do our sadhana nicely, if we do our, not just sadhana, this is not referring to our morning program, but all of our practices of devotional service, by pleasing the spiritual master and Krishna and the devotees, we will naturally come to this more advanced stage. And all of this will become very natural to us. But at the same time, we have to aspire to reach the stage of Raganuga. One simply cannot think, I will do things mechanically and it will come by itself. No. It is in the realm of practice. One is also practicing this bhakti in such a way as to wanting to do it with feeling, not just out of duty, out of our intelligence, but out of feeling. And when we serve Krishna out of feeling, we are starting to do Raganuga Bhakti. So keep in mind that while Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti is an advanced stage, it is in the realm of practice, not perfection. So Raganuga is in the stage of practice, meaning sadhana, not on the stage of prema. So Rupa Goswami, he writes that that person who is greedy for attaining a bhava similar to that of the inhabitants of Raja is qualified for Raganuga Bhakti. Special natural appreciation of the descriptions of a particular pastime of Godhead indicates the constitutional position of a living entity. Srila Prabhupada, Purport CC Adi 434. So one's Raganuga Bhakti means the realization of one's eternal Swarupa. This is why one is following in the footsteps of a devotee in Vrindavan, because that is one's Swarupa. It's not that in Raganuga Bhakti one just automatically, whimsically just chooses one devotee and says, I'll follow in their footsteps. No, there's a particular revelation that the Lord has given. And according to that revelation, one understands that this is my eternal rasa, my eternal swarupa with the Lord. I am, a monkey in Vrindavan, and that is my eternal swarupa. And so therefore, the devotee starts to follow the example of the monkeys of Vrindavan. They start to read about them and what their activities are and what type of ways they assist Krishna in Krishna's mischief, in what ways they try to steal butter. In these ways, they are developing that. Now, before that revelation or realization comes, one may start to get hints of one's eternal relationship with Krishna, one's Swarupa. A devotee may start getting hints. And Srila Prabhupada, this is a quote from Srila Prabhupada, he says that a special attraction for a particular pastime of Krishna is indicative of the devotee's constitutional position with Krishna. So if one is deeply attached or attracted to a particular pastime, that can be indicative of one's constitutional position. Now, we have to be careful here that we should not even apply this principle too early in our spiritual life. Like, for example, we may feel attracted to a particular pastime just because it's very humorous, but not because it's our eternal Swarupa. What this special appreciation is referring to is an unexplicable attraction to a particular pastime, form, quality of the Lord, particular revelation of the Lord. And this can also take place in regard to service. A special appreciation for a particular service of Krishna, for Krishna, can be indicative of the constitutional position of a living entity. And this you find many times in the case of devotees, where they're so deeply attached or attracted to a particular service in a particular relationship with Krishna, that it becomes indicative of that devotee's constitutional position. One devotee, very advanced devotee in this movement, has been noted, and they are never making a show. They're just they do it sometimes, where in the course of performing the arti, and in particular in doing the chamara to the Lord, they lose their sense of external reality, their sense of time. And they'll keep doing that, and people around them have to remind them that the arti is over, or that they've been doing the chamara for 15-20 minutes and now it's time to move on. So things like that. So one can understand, well, okay, maybe this devotee's eternal Swarupa is fanning the Lord, like the gopis do, like the manjaris do, or the other devotees do in the spiritual world. Or some devotee is deeply, deeply attached to singing for the Lord, like His Grace Aindra Prabhu, and perhaps their Swarupa in the spiritual world is singing for the Lord. So in an advanced devotee, in a very advanced devotee, certain special attractions for particular pastimes or particular services are indicative of the devotee's constitutional position. Also, certain services can turn into our constitutional position. When an advanced, realized devotee hears about the affairs of the devotees of Vrindavan in the mellows of Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, he becomes inclined in one of these ways, and his intelligence becomes attracted. Indeed, he begins to covet that particular type of devotion. When such covetousness is awakened, one's intelligence no longer depends on the instructions of Shastra, revealed scripture, or on logic and argument. So this is Srila Prabhupada's translation in the Chaitanya Charitamrita of Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita 12292. And I'll read this one more time. This is a very significant verse. When an advanced, realized devotee hears about the affairs of the devotees of Vrindavan in the mellows of Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, he becomes inclined in one of these ways, and his intelligence becomes attracted. Indeed, he begins to covet that particular type of devotion. When such covetousness is awakened, one's intelligence no longer depends on the instructions of Shastra, or logic, or argument. So this is what I was just mentioning, which Prabhupada here is saying, that a devotee begins to covet that particular type of devotion. There's some special attraction there. And then one's working out of on the platform of love. And although one is still following the Shastras, one is still performing it very honestly, one is no longer, that no longer becomes the source of one's motivation. And one's intelligence becomes very spiritual. There's a higher spiritual reason why the devotee is doing something. It's no longer the common form of intelligence that we are used to. 1 second. The appearance of that greed, this is Rupa Goswami's verse, the appearance of that greed is indicated when the intelligence does not depend on rules of scripture and logic. After realizing to some degree the sweetness of their love through the process of hearing from the scriptures. So one's motivation, intelligence does not depend on these things, but the sweetness of the love through the process of hearing from the scriptures. So that's what Prabhupada before was also saying, right? That how by hearing that pastime and hearing these pastimes again and again, one realizes that sweetness and then becomes spontaneously attached to it. As soon as the greed manifests in him for attaining a bhava similar to that of the Vrajavasis, and he develops an indication for Raga Bhakti, the practitioner of Raganuga Bhakti does not depend any longer on scriptural rules and logic. However, wherever that greed has appeared, it is understood that the person must have studied the scriptures in order to attain that greed. It is also necessary to study the scriptures in order to understand the proper sadhana for Raganuga Bhakti. So the qualification, the eligibility, the way to attain Raganuga Bhakti is to have intense greed to serve the Lord in a particular way. And that greed, once that it develops, is no longer dependent on scriptures or logic. However, that greed itself comes as a result of studying the scriptures, as a result of serving the devotees. That greed manifests. So what we're doing right now is helping us come to the stage of Raganuga Bhakti because we are studying the scriptures. And as a result of this, we attain that greed. And this is a realization actually I had, particularly in terms of the Nectar of Devotion, that one thing I've noticed that in studying this book, Nectar of Devotion, whenever I study it, I get a very intense desire to become a better devotee. So one gets an intense desire to become, to no longer be a mixed devotee, but just to become a surrendered devotee. And that happens as a result of studying the scriptures. When we read Nectar Devotion and we read these books, we get this intense desire. So this is sort of the process that is being described here. is first is hearing of the pastimes. Everything starts with hearing about Krishna's pastimes. Like Rupa Goswami mentioned, we must hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and he says especially the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. From hearing this pastimes, we realize or relish a sweetness. And from relishing that sweetness, we get an intense greed to serve Krishna in that way. And then once we have that intense greed, we are so mad after Krishna that there's a decrease in scriptural regulation, in things that are, so to say, restricting or regulating the devotee. Although the devotee is still following all the rules and regulations, they're less important to the devotee, and their spontaneous love for Krishna becomes fully manifest in their heart. Someone may argue that particularly Srila Prabhupada and Bhakti Siddhanta warned that the awakening of one's eternal specific position happens only to those who are liberated. At the same time, they both, following Sarup Damodar and Rupa Goswamis, consistently present Raganuga as a sadhana done by sadhakas. Therefore, the purity that almost always is necessary for an awakening is not absolute. So if one's love for Krishna and this mood awakens in one's heart only after becoming liberated, then why is Raganuga Bhakti mentioned as on the stage of sadhana bhakti? Why is it mentioned in sadhana? Why isn't it on the level of bhava or prema? Well, because it's not all or nothing. It's not that we are one day a practitioner and the next day we are a pure devotee, but rather there's this gradual process of becoming to that stage of fully awakening one's eternal relationship with Krishna. And at this point, I want to make a very interesting and very important point that His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj has made. So it's a bona fide point that actually our process in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, in Srila Prabhupada's movement, is one of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Actually, what Srila Prabhupada gave us is Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Initially, that process of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, because we don't have spontaneous attraction for Krishna, it begins as Vaidhi Sadhana, because the source of our motivation is the order of the spiritual master and the scriptures. The spontaneous love is not there. So in the beginning, it starts as Vaidhi Sadhana. However, it is a Vaidhi Sadhana or a sadhana that is aimed towards awakening Raganuga Bhakti, awakening our eternal relationship with Krishna. And the proof of this is the way that Srila Prabhupada gave us this process of sadhana. The proof of this is in the prayers that we chant every single day. So one of the prayers, for example, that we chant is the Tulsi Puja. Every single day, devotees all around the world, they perform Tulsi Puja. Every one of us, we should chant Tulsi Puja every single day. Very, very important. And we chant Tulsi Puja. This is worshipping Tulsi Maharani. And we're singing this beautiful prayer, Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Nama. And this is part of our sadhana. Just like all around the world, in India and all around the world, people are worshipping Tulsi, we are also worshipping Tulsi. However, the prayer that we are singing is not an ordinary prayer. That prayer is not just any prayer, but rather that is a prayer on the platform of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And those of us who know the translation, or if we learn this translation, we will see why. Is there anyone on this call who knows the translation for the song, the Tulsi prayers, who could recite it?
Yes, Prabhuji. Not, yeah.
Okay, please, Mataji, go ahead and say it.
So, Prabhuji, you know what? Not exactly, but I remember Amorai Abhilash Vilas Kunje Diyovas. So, is this what you're looking for, Prabhuji?
Yes, yes. So that's the line there. So, but the English translation of the entire song is, O Tulsi, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. So, first sentence is saying, my desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Who are we to ask? But Srila Prabhupada is telling us to sing this song. And it's written by a Vaishnavacharya, and we are repeating it. So the Vaishnavacharya is asking it, and we are repeating it because we have no right to ask. But by repeating this song, we are asking Krishna through the Acharyas. So my desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. So this is asking for residence in Vrindavan. This is called Raganuga Bhakti. Again, Ragatmika Bhakti, following in the footsteps of a Ragatmika devotee, a liberated devotee. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in the pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. So, a residence in the groves of Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Shri Radha and Krishna. So, we're asking for the benediction of beholding the pastimes of Shri Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of the cowherd damsels of Raja. So this prayer is saying, I beg you to make me a follower of the cowherd damsels of Raja. What is this? This is Raganuga Bhakti. You're praying to become a follower of the cowherd damsels of Raja, which is the gopis, which is in the mood of this Ragatmika Bhakti, in the mood of one of the residents of Vrindavan, the highest residents, the gopis. I beg you to make me a follower of the cowherd damsels of Raja. Please give me the privilege of devotional service. So please give me the privilege of devotional service. I beg you to make a follower. Please give me, and make me your own maidservant. Make me your maidservant. This very fallen, lowly servant of Krishna prays, may always swim in the love of Shri Radha and Govinda. Right? So this is the translation. We recite it every morning, or we should be reciting it every morning. This is the translation to the song of this Tulsi prayer. From beginning to end, this song is on the platform of Raganuga Bhakti. Srila Prabhupada told all of his disciples, all the devotees of ISKCON, to sing this song every single morning as part of the morning program. And when he told them, he didn't tell them that, oh, this is Raganuga Bhakti. He didn't explicitly tell them. He said, this is your sadhana, you do it. But Prabhupada was giving us, unknown to us, the process of Raganuga sadhana bhakti. And this is a point that Tamal Krishna Maharaj makes. And he gives numerous other examples of how when one is performing the regular normal services that we do in ISKCON, one is actually doing Raganuga sadhana bhakti. And more is going to come in these slides as well. We'll see how those practices come up. In this connection, Srila Prabhupada defines the stage for the eligibility for Raganuga sadhana in the Nectar Devotion, chapter 16. Quote, in following the regulated principles of devotional service, there's a stage called Anartha Nivritti, which means the disappearance of all material contamination. Anartha Nivritti is a stage in the middle practice. It is not a stage of perfection. From the point of view of a gross materialist, such persons are liberated and free from all material desires. So, even in the stage of Raganuga sadhana bhakti, there are still anarthas in the heart. And this is why Raganuga is not the same as Prema Bhakti. This is why it's mentioned as sadhana. There's still anarthas. The anarthas from the heart have not completely gone. In fact, up until the stage of bhava, there are still anarthas in the heart. Like, for example, Bharat Maharaj, we find in the Bhagavatam, he was on the stage of bhava, yet he still had a small anartha, which was his anartha of wanting to be the protector of the world and this small deer. And therefore he fell down for some time, meaning he had to take another birth. He didn't really fall down, but just he had a slip, because anarthas are still even on the stage of bhava. So on the stage of Raganuga, one is emulating one of the residents of Vrindavan, but that doesn't mean that one becomes one of the residents of Vrindavan. One still has some anarthas, and one is just trying to follow in their footsteps, to get that same mood, just to get that mood. That's all. And of course, in the beginning, we're not even artificially trying to get that mood. We're just trying to serve so that Krishna gives us the knowledge one day, what is our mood? And Prabhupada was once asked, when do we get that knowledge? And Srila Prabhupada said that I will tell you from within your heart when you are ready. So the spiritual master reveals that from within his heart, within the devotee's heart, when the devotee is ready. From the point of view of the eternally perfected Ragatmika Bhaktas, such persons are in a gradual process of awakening and still harbor some subtle anarthas. Srila Prabhupada writes of the Raganuga sadhakas, there's a gradual development of the ambition to become like a particular devotee, and this activity is called Raganuga. Unquote. We note the word gradual in Prabhupada's statement. Now, it's very important, this point also, it's very important to note this, because sometimes in our movement, we see that some devotees are so spiritually advanced. And when we are in touch with them, we actually experience their advancement. Many devotees have had this experience. Like, this devotee is genuinely, really, really advanced. And then later on, we see that devotee falls down. They have a fall down. Like in the case of some devotees who took initiation and their guru fell down. And when the guru falls down, they start to question all of their past experiences with their guru. That, all of these experiences must have been false because he was obviously fallen. He was obviously not advanced. This is why he fell down. And so therefore, all my experiences, things that I thought were miracles coming through my guru, or miracles that I experienced in service to Krishna, those are all of those things, they are must be false. But that is not true. The reason why that's not true is because one can actually be a very advanced devotee. It's possible that the spiritual master was on the platform of Raganuga Bhakti or even Bhava Bhakti. One can be on a very advanced level, but still have a very subtle anartha, still have a small anartha. Sorry, I need to take a break. Again, the front door is not shut again, so it's making a sound. 1 second. Sorry, the front door keeps, if it's not closed completely, the lock keeps vibrating. So I have to close it. So, okay. So this is the gradual, we note the word gradual in Prabhupada's statement. So one can be, those experiences could have been real, and the devotee was on that highly spiritual platform, but because there are few anarthas, that devotee fell down. So it's not all or nothing again. It's not that some devotees fallen or not fallen. And it's therefore a mistake to even criticize a devotee who falls down. Because Bharat Maharaj fell down and he became a deer. Imagine, he became an animal in his next life. Yet he was on the platform of bhava, far, far, far beyond where most of us are. I mean, there's Vaidhi sadhana, then Raganuga, then there's bhava after that, and then finally prema. So many stages are there, and he had passed through all of them. And his small detour, even in that detour, he was way ahead of where most of us are. So in the lectures that Srila Prabhupada gave on the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada makes these points. Transcendental platform means above the three modes of material nature, which is called Brahma Bhuta. Without being in the liberated stage, no one can be engaged in devotional service. Bhakti begins when one is actually liberated from the influence of the modes of material nature. Actually, we are in the material state, but we are being trained up. But even in the training period, if one is sincere and serious, he's liberated. He's liberated. It is so nice. Krishna consciousness is so nice that even in the training period, although he is not mature. So this is something that again and again we find in Prabhupada's books, and it's actually something that devotees discuss a lot. That liberation, first of all, Prabhupada makes the point that liberation means beyond the three modes of material nature. Liberation means you have to be above this, you cannot be in the modes of nature. That is liberation. But so that's the highest stage, that's the stage a devotee needs to be at. And that's not an ordinary thing to be above the modes. That means no goodness, passion, or ignorance. Nothing, none of that is completely transcendental. The devotee is transcendental. But we can temporarily experience that state of liberation even while we are training. Because while we are training, although we have not actually crossed the modes of material nature, we are acting on that level. We're acting on the level of being beyond the modes of nature. At that moment, because we are in the association of devotees and Krishna and the temple, the modes are not affecting us, right? At that moment, at that time. And so therefore we are not in the modes at that time. So even in training, one can be on that stage, one can experience that stage. And this is why Krishna consciousness is so nice. At the same time, sometimes when we are in the stage of training and we are temporarily above the modes, we start to think that we actually are above the modes. But then after some little bit of time, Krishna actually shows where we're actually at. He shows the real side. And then our struggles in Krishna consciousness continue, or they manifest. So you see sometimes a very new devotee in Krishna consciousness, and they are just like, in bliss and completely, in a transcendental level. They're just perfect in their service and all these things. And another devotee who's been in the movement 15, 20 years, they are, struggling with some basic material desires, or, they're not so much engaged in devotional service. And one may think that this new devotee is actually far more advanced than this older devotee, or this long-time devotee. Maybe, maybe not, because in the beginning, in our training stage, Krishna gives us that glimpse of bhava, gives us the glimpse of that ecstasy. But we're actually not above the modes. We're temporarily, you could say, levitating there. And that same new devotee will then 5 years later, then have to take some further purification to actually become free from the modes, for which Krishna will put that devotee through some very difficult tests. And that will also, inhibit the devotee from acting on this transcendental platform. So to be actually above the modes of material nature is not an ordinary thing. One place Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, he says that just to get from the platform of bhava to prema, so one is on the platform of bhava, and to move from bhava to prema can take millions of lifetimes. Anarthas are so subtle, it can take millions of lifetimes, he says, to get from bhava to prema. And of course, the key word is can. It can take. By the mercy of the devotee, we don't have to wait that long. But the point being is that there's many different levels of devotees, and even very, very advanced devotees sometimes have anarthas, and therefore to be the perfectly advanced devotee is something very rare. And this is why Srila Prabhupada, who Srila Prabhupada is so special. There's so many advanced devotees. So why Srila Prabhupada is so special? Why our acharyas are so special? Because they are perfectly liberated. They are, even among the advanced, they are the most advanced. And so here in this Nectar devotion, we learn about these subtle levels and advancements so that we don't become disillusioned, so that we don't take things cheaply and or become misled. And it actually is the background behind our philosophy, why we accept great devotees of the Lord as our spiritual masters, and at the same time Srila Prabhupada has a special position because of all of these different stages. And when we are on the platform of sadhana, we don't know the difference between a devotee on bhava or a devotee on prema. So it's possible that our spiritual master is on the level of prema. It's possible that our spiritual master is on the level of bhava. But one thing that we know for sure is that Srila Prabhupada was on the level of prema. And therefore Prabhupada is the pillar or the foundation of this movement. Whatever it is, we have Prabhupada's shelter. And we get Prabhupada's shelter through our spiritual master's shelter. Realizing that Prabhupada still has his unique position. So this is the practice of Raganuga sadhana, which I've been discussing. We've discussed how Vaidhi sadhana turns into Raganuga, how Raganuga tries to follow a Ragatmika devotee. Now Prabhupada points out is, well, what is not the practice of Raganuga? Because as you can imagine, we are very eager to join Krishna's pastimes. So some people may, including ourselves, we may want to jump into it too fast. So what is it not? In this connection, we should be careful about the so-called Siddha Pranali. The Siddha Pranali process is followed by a class of men who are not very authorized and who have manufactured their own way of devotional service. They imagine that they have become associates of the Lord simply by thinking of themselves like that. This external behavior is not at all according to the regulated principles. The so-called Siddha Pranali process is followed by the Prakrita Sahajyas, a pseudo-sect of so-called Vaishnavas. In the opinion of Rupa Goswami, such activities are simply disturbances to the standard way of devotional service. So there's a group of people who practice the so-called Siddha Pranali, which means that they feel that they know their Siddha Deha. Siddha Deha means their perfected form. And Siddha Pranali means trying to meditate on your Siddha Deha. So you imagine that you are the assistant of Lalita Devi and Lalita Sakhi, and you are therefore imagining your form. So this is a disturbance. This is nonsense. In Krishna consciousness, there's nothing of imagining. There's simply following. So this so-called Siddha Pranali is actually based on a genuine Siddha Pranali. What is Siddha Pranali? It's composed of Ekadasha Bhava, that is 11 elements of one's spiritual identity. and this is mentioned in the Nama Chintamani and Jaiva Dharma Bhaktivinoda Thakur as a bona fide spiritual process for developing the Siddha Deha. So the spiritual identity of Siddha Deha has 11 elements. One meditates on these elements of one's spiritual identity in relationship to Krishna. The details are given in Gaura Govinda Smarana Padati by Dhyana Chandra Goswami. This is not mentioned in the works of the six Goswamis, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur said this is a bona fide. At the time of Varana Dasha, the second stage of meditation, the Guru gives the disciple his identity as a Manjari with specific details. So this genuine process of Siddha Pranali, its most essential stage, which is the second stage, is Varana Dasha. That is a stage of knowing who you are. And that he specifically mentions is given by the Guru. It is not something imagined by the disciple. And that's a key thing. When the disciple is ready, the Guru gives it. How to practice Raganuga? One should specifically engage himself in the type of devotional service for which he has a natural aptitude. For example, one person may have a particular interest in hearing. Another may have a particular interest in chanting, and another may have a particular interest in serving in the temple. So these are any of the other 6 different types of devotional service: remembering, serving, praying, engaging in some particular service, being in a friendly relationship, or offering everything in one's possession should be executed in full earnestness. In this way, everyone should act according to his particular taste. So, as I mentioned, Raganuga Bhakti starts by engaging in a service that is natural to the devotee. And that may be an indication. Again, on the stage of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, one cannot follow one's heart or one's taste. In Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, one has to fulfill the instruction of the order of the Guru. One feels like it or doesn't, because the mind and senses are so conditioned, we don't feel like doing what is good for us. But on the stage of Raganuga, one engages in that particular process, which is very attractive to the devotee. There's one point I was going to make here, I'm forgetting. Okay, hopefully I'll come back. Among the 64 angas of bhakti, even for those practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, under the heading of servitorship, devotees should serve the Lord according to their taste and ability. Also, offering a favorite article includes doing for the Lord activities one enjoys. In Vaidhi, such choice of service is often related to one's temporal mood and ability. In Raganuga, that choice is more about what nourishes the development of one's inner meditation on a specific eternal service. So one should always serve Krishna, or one should always try to serve Krishna according to one's nature. And the spiritual master will also try to engage the devotee according to their nature. Largely speaking, as I mentioned, some things we have to do, even if it's not our nature, we do it just to follow the instruction of the spiritual master. But in general, we work according to our nature. Now, on the stage of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, our service is according to one's temporary material nature, one's varna. One is a fighting nature. One can go out and distribute books and fight Maya away. If one has a more, you could say, peaceful nature, one may decide to do, or not exactly peaceful or non-peaceful, one has a nature to be more reserved. Maybe one will do more services inside the temple. Of course, everyone should preach, but one's nature does determine the service that one chooses. It's just a fact. Now, on the stage of Raganuga Bhakti, one is performing that also according to one's nature, but now it's one's spiritual nature, the nature of one's spiritual body. So we take the practices of devotional service that nourish one's inner meditation on one's eternal specific service to the Lord, and one has a form that is related to that service. So again, if our service is to sing for Krishna in the spiritual world, one may be attracted to doing that service in the material world for Krishna as well, because that nourishes the inner meditation of our eternal spiritual service. The devotee should always think of Krishna within himself and should choose a very dear devotee who is a servitor of Krishna in Vrindavan. One should constantly engage in topics about the servitor, about that servitor, and his loving relationship with Krishna. And one should live in Vrindavan. If one is physically unable to go to Vrindavan, he should mentally live there. So, this is actually nicely summarizing everything that we have said. One has to choose a very dear devotee and should constantly engage in topics about that servitor, not Krishna, but it's saying that devotee, because that's how we will imbibe that devotee's mood and his loving relationship with Krishna. The advanced devotee who is inclined to spontaneous loving service should follow the activities of a particular associate of Krishna in Vrindavan. He should execute service externally as a regulated devotee, as well as internally from his self-realized position. Thus, he should perform devotional service both externally and internally. And here, Prabhupada says, actually, in the chapter, he says that the Raganuga Bhakta, this very super advanced devotee, externally, that devotee should act like a neophyte devotee. In other words, they should follow the rules and regulations of bhakti to such an extent that is recommended for the neophyte devotee. And internally, they are performing their eternal service to Krishna in the spiritual world. Meaning that there's no excuse at any point not to perform our activities of sadhana. If one is neophyte, truly neophyte, one has to do it to advance. But even if one thinks one's very advanced and one's on the spontaneous level, externally, still we have to perform our normal sadhana, because that's the way the devotee acts externally as a neophyte devotee. So if someone is not performing their Krishna consciousness in the way that is prescribed in the scriptures, then they cannot be an advanced devotee of the Lord. They will never, even the great souls don't deviate from following the rules and regulations, simply out of respect for the scriptures and for this process. So this is a small ladder on how to practice Raganuga Bhakti. This is again summarizing some of the points that we mentioned. Think of Krishna, choose a devotee who is a very dear servitor in a relationship similar to what has awakened within oneself, and discuss this devotee's activities. Physically or mentally live in Vrindavan. Meditate on the relationship of service between Krishna and this devotee. Do not manifest this meditation externally. Externally, behave as a neophyte, which I had mentioned. Engage in the specific angas of bhakti according to one's taste that help to develop the specific relationship one aspires for with the Lord. Gradually, one will develop the internal sentiments of the devotee one is following. So, in this practice of Raganuga Bhakti, the physical body is engaged in following the conduct given by Rupa Goswami, the 64 Angas of Bhakti, particularly focusing on what suits one's taste and relationship with the Lord. So the physical body is engaged in that way. But then the internal body, or the Siddha Deha, the spiritual body, one has to identify what that body is. Is it a coward boy, a coward girl, or something like that? And one then has to follow the conduct of the residents of Raja in meditation. Now, there are two types of Raganuga sadhana bhakti. One is called Kamanuga, or devotion in the conjugal mood, and the other is called Sambandhanuga. That aspires for one of other rasas. So Sambandhanuga is like becoming Krishna's friend or parent, Krishna's friend or parent, or you have Sakhya Ras, Vatsalya Ras, Madhurya Ras, Shantaras, and what's the fifth one? I'm blanking out right now.
Dasya.
Dasya Ras, yes, sorry, thank you. So if one is aspiring to become the servant of Krishna, then that would be Sambandhanuga, a friend. That would be Sambandhanuga. Only the conjugal mood is Kamanuga. So those who aspire in Raganuga Bhakti to become a conjugal lover, they are practicing Kamanuga. Everyone else is practicing Sambandhanuga. Such aspiration does not depend on the current body, male or female. So, for example, a male devotee can become or meditate on becoming a gopi of Vrindavan. Examples are given of males who aspire to be Krishna's gopis, and women can aspire to be cowherd boys. Right? So the sages in the forest who saw Lord Ram were men, but they aspired to be gopis. Right? Then Rupa Goswami writes, a person who serves on the path of Vaidhi Bhakti with a desire for a conjugal relationship with the Lord and a high position, but without desire for the gopis type of love, after some time becomes a queen in Dwarka. So now within Kamanuga, there are two categories. One is for Svakiya Ras, the other is for Parakiya Ras. Svakiya Ras being the love between Krishna and his wives. Parakiya is the love between Krishna and the gopis. So when a person is aspiring for a relationship with Krishna where there is much opulence, then that will lead to becoming one of the wives of Krishna. So there's two types of Kamanuga, Raganuga, or which is in the Madhurya Bhav. Two types of them is Kamanuga, Raganuga. One is Sambhogecha Mayi Bhakti. This is characterized by enjoying conjugally with Krishna. So this is the aspiration of actually becoming a direct associate of Krishna, like one of the gopis of Vrindavan. So actually having a conjugal connection or relationship with Krishna. Then there's a second one, which is Tadbhave Chatmika Bhakti. It's characterized by desiring the sweet mood of love of the Kamarupa Siddha devotees. You relish the conjugal, which means you desire that same mood, which means to relish or observe or serve the conjugal loving affairs of the Lord. So one is not in direct conjugal contact with Krishna. One is not directly relating with Krishna in a conjugal way, but rather one has those conjugal feelings towards Krishna. One has that sweet love of those devotees, but one is serving them and relishing these pastimes. So the Manjaris in Vrindavan, like Rupa Goswami's Rupa Manjari, which of the two would they be in? Would they be practicing Sambhogecha Mayi Bhakti or Tadbhave Chatmika Bhakti?
Tadbhave Chatmika Bhakti.
That's okay. One answer. Anyone else would like to give another try? So they're actually, their mood, the Manjari's mood is one of Tad Bhave Chatmika Bhakti. Because the Manjaris themselves, they don't dance with Krishna. The Manjaris themselves don't have a direct conjugal relationship with Krishna. However, their position is actually even more fortunate than the other gopis. Because the other gopis, they are not allowed to see Radha and Krishna's, you could say, personal pastimes, meaning when Radha and Krishna perform pastimes by themselves, they are only part of the pastimes in which all the gopis are there. Because they also being in the conjugal mood, their presence will be a, so to say, a disturbance to Radha and Krishna's pastimes in that particular rasa. Because some of them are even competitors to Srimati Radharani in a transcendental way, like Chandravali. She's a competitor to Srimati Radharani. However, the Manjaris, because they are not in a conjugal relationship with Krishna, they have the conjugal mood, yet they're serving the divine couple in that conjugal mood, in that conjugal rasa, in that sort of, in that same mellow they are serving. They can see all of Krishna's pastimes. They know more about Radha and Krishna's loving, intimate pastimes than even the other gopis do. And therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, being the principal manjaris, they therefore had knowledge of all of Krishna's pastimes and were perfectly suited for writing them down. This is why they were the authorities on Krishna's pastimes, as Lord Chaitanya said, because they, as manjaris, could actually see them. So they are characterized by the sweet mood of the love of the Kamarupa devotees, but they are more relishing those pastimes than engaging in them. And then there's the other types of Raganuga that are outside of the Kamanuga. These are the Sambandhanuga. And those are the parents and friends and servants of the Lord. Practicing devotees greedy for parental, friendly, or servant relationships perform this bhakti with indications of the behavior and mood of Nanda, Subala, and others. So in this mood, they are serving the Lord, and one aspires following in the footsteps of these devotees. So now there's a word of caution. In aspiring to follow these great devotees of the Lord, it is better to aspire to follow in the footsteps of an exalted devotee and serve them than to want that position directly. For wanting the position directly can become impersonalism. So let's say one is very attracted to the parental rasa. If one is very attracted to the parental rasa, one can pray to the Lord to become a parent of the Lord. Like Krishna has so many sets of parents, Nanda and Vasudev, then there's, Nanda and Yashoda, and then Vasudev and Devaki. But one can never and one should never make the mistake of aspiring to actually become Nanda Maharaj. To try to actually become a devotee who is far more advanced than ourselves is actually a great offense. Raganuga means following in their footsteps, developing the same feelings as them, and possibly the same service as theirs, but not becoming them. No one can be Nanda and Vasudeva and Yashoda. No one can replace their unique transcendental position. So it's impersonalism to think that we can become Nanda Maharaj. So finally, last few slides, what is the cause of Raganuga Bhakti? How do we get this Raganuga Bhakti? The mercy of Krishna and his devotees is the only cause of attaining Raganuga Bhakti. Some call this type of devotion Pushti Marg. So it's the mercy of Krishna and the devotees. That's the only cause of getting Raganuga Bhakti. So it's the mercy of Krishna and the devotees that gives us this bhakti. Well, then what gives us the mercy? Generally speaking, the mercy is given to those who are very sincere in their Vaidhi sadhana. So through that practice, we engender the devotees' mercy, and then we are able to come to the stage of Raganuga Bhakti. And that is the end. So one final point I wanted to make, that the main qualification on this point here, the main qualification for reaching the stage of Raganuga Bhakti is, as we mentioned, the mercy of the devotees in Krishna. And that mercy is primarily, it is very easily reached, and it is primarily attained by the quality and the practice of obedience. The devotee that is obedient to the spiritual master and to the devotees and to Krishna, that devotee very quickly gets to the stage of Raganuga Bhakti. Because as we're seeing, it's all due to mercy. Due to mercy, one gets this taste. Due to mercy, one becomes greedy. One gets the lobha or the greed to reach the Lord. So that mercy, how do we get that mercy? That mercy is when Prabhupada again and again says in the Gita, as you all read, the secret for success in spiritual life is satisfying the spiritual master. The secret for success, again and again, Prabhupada, the secret for success is satisfying the spiritual master. And what does satisfying the spiritual master mean? It means obedience. One has to become surrendered to the spiritual master. And Prabhupada, in one place, he actually explains what obedience means. Obedience means trying to understand, not trying not to understand, or not trying to find every reason not to understand, but trying to understand. So one has to try to understand what is the mission and the message and the desire of the spiritual master. One has to try to understand that, rather than being caught up in what is pleasurable for ourselves, or what is pleasing to our own senses, or what is we prefer, or our likes and dislikes. Rather than being caught up in that, what we like or dislike, or how we feel about something, our temporary emotional or states, is to try to understand the mood and mission of the spiritual master, and not to have blind faith, but to then, after understanding everything, to fulfill the desire, instruction, and mission of the spiritual master. So this is all of these different stages of advancement are, so to say, different stages of, you could say, more advancement in obedience. The Raganuga devotee is following in the footsteps, trying to serve and follow in the footsteps of the Ragatmika devotee. And that is because they no longer have any, like Prabhupada uses the word, any misgivings. They're willing to just serve from their heart spontaneously, serve Krishna. The misgivings in their heart are gone. All the complications, and their mind and their heart is very simple. Let me just serve the Lord. Let me just please the Lord. This is my role. I'm very insignificant. I don't have to worry about my honor or dishonor, my happiness or distress. I just need to serve, because I'm very, very insignificant. So this whole process of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and anartha nivritti is there to take away these misgivings of the heart and to make ourselves simple. When Lord Chaitanya meets Kolavechar Sridhar, the quality that he really likes about him is his simplicity. And again, we'll see in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes and Krishna's instructions that this quality of simplicity is very much appreciated. So the devotee is not trying to be very complicated and trying to, this rasa or that rasa, and should I, now try to meditate on my, eternal Swarupa as this or that, that's exactly going opposite to the heart of this process, to the heart of what Raganuga Bhakti is about. And that's why that process doesn't take us there. Because Raganuga Bhakti is actually the exact opposite of that. It's not speculation, it's not aspiration, it's not ambition. Prabhupada uses that word ambition, but he uses it in a particular way or a particular sense. Ambition not in terms of personal ambition, but ambition in terms of desire of serving the Lord, ambition for the service of the Lord. So Raganuga Bhakti is opposite to all this. Raganuga Bhakti is actually about simplicity. The spiritual master reveals the disciple's Swarupa, and the disciple is purified in heart enough that the disciple can just serve, can just follow the Guru's instructions. So that simplicity is important, obedience is important, and also then the purification of heart. If we still have many, many material desires, we are materially attached, then we are not ready for Raganuga Bhakti. And that's the hardest part. Giving up the material attachment is very, very difficult. And that the process of hearing and chanting gradually cleanses our heart, so we come to that stage. Okay, so I'll stop here now. I spoke a lot, and we can open it up for questions.
You're muted, Prabhuji.
Shama Kishori Mataji, you can go.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful class. Most of this was very high level and very difficult for me to understand. I have two questions, Prabhuji. I'll start with one, and then if we have time, we can come for the second.
Yes.
So right now, when we are practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, all these 5 rasas and everything is like way above, but we generally practice it in the mood of servitude, dasya. But is it okay to think of Krishna as a friend, or how should we think of him?
So right now, we don't know what our rasa is. So all the rasas have one common rasa. In other words, the basis of all these rasas are dasya rasa, servitude. So when we don't know what our eternal rasa is, then our rasa is service. Because all of these rasas are different ways of trying to serve Krishna. So the devotee in Madhurya Ras is playing that role. And Prabhupada also makes this point clear again and again in the reading. You'll see Prabhupada says that although it appears that the gopis were trying to love Krishna in a conjugal way, we cannot understand, but they were doing that because they were trying to serve Krishna. They had ambition to dance with Krishna because they wanted to serve Krishna that way. So right now, due to our conditioning, it doesn't look like service, but every rasa is actually just a way to serve Krishna. Hence, our goal is only to be a servant. And so until our rasa is realized, we are serving as a servant. We consider ourselves only as a servant. Of course, certain activities in bhakti are more in the friendship rasa, like we said, preaching. Right? Preaching is more in the friendship rasa than dasya rasa, but still the mood is one of service. And the second thing also that I wanted to mention is that, and then the activities of bhakti are sadhana designed in such a way that we will automatically go to the platform of Raganuga. We're automatically, like I mentioned, the Tulsi prayers, that those feelings will gradually develop anyway. So we really are not concerned about anything. We just have to become a servant. And Prabhupada's process is so wonderful that will gradually develop feelings of spontaneous affection.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Just to follow up on that. So when we are teaching our kids about Krishna consciousness, right? I tell them that think of Krishna as your friend. You can share your thoughts with him and pray to him. So is that okay? Because how are you otherwise going to have that personal connection? With him?
Yes. Now, friend in that way is different. But a devotee always thinks, and in fact should think of Krishna as their friend. This is actually mentioned in Nectar devotion also, that a devotee always thinks of the Lord as their friend. And in the Gita, Krishna says, Suhridam Sarvabhutana. I am the friend of all living entities. So that way, in the sense, he's our friend in the sense of our well-wisher. But what I was meaning to say, like friends in terms of cowherd boys, yeah, that type of actually becoming a friend of the Lord in terms of our Siddha Deha, that is, not there right now, or we cannot realize that right now. But yes, we should always think of Krishna as our friend.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Indu Lekha Karuna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you
Hare
for the
Krishna.
wonderful class, Prabhu.
Thank you.
So Prabhuji, I did not have a question. There was someone who wanted to see you, so that's why I just,
Oh,
is
I
that
see.
okay?
Someone wanted to see me.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hari Bol.
Pranam. Let's see it.
It's right. He can hear you.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Oh, I just saw you now. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam. Bal Mukunda Prabhu Jai.
Jai. Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you in your program, but anyway, I'm very glad to see that you were having classes and we are staying at Mataji's place this weekend. So,
Wow, I'm so glad you revealed yourself, and you'd come. It's so nice to see you after such a long time, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll give you a call, and sorry to other devotees for disturbing.
So I'm in Chicago now, Prabhu. So you have to visit me also here.
Sure, sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Vivek Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you for explaining a lot about Raganuga Bhakti. Like many of them mentioned, it's very elaborate. I think we'll have to read through the book again and probably contemplate on what you taught us today. The question I have is, Prabhuji, is you mentioned that the process of practicing Raganuga Bhakti, you showed us a small diagram of the process actually starts from hearing. That was actually in line with the 5 powerful limbs of potent limbs of bhakti that you were explaining us in the previous classes. But then in the later slides, it also mentioned that a devotee should practice any form of service according to his particular taste. So these two seem to be a little contradictory, at least to my mundane understanding, because we also read that the 5 potent forms of bhakti is so and so, and then practice of Raganuga Bhakti actually starts from hearing, and then again we're also hearing that according to one's taste we can practice a form of bhakti. So how do we understand these two, Prabhuji? If you can elaborate on that.
Yes. So the hearing is the basis. Again, it's the most fundamental, in some ways, most fundamental principle or practice of devotional service. Because everything starts with hearing. Even if we want to chant about Krishna, or we want to remember Krishna, we want to be a friend of Krishna, or we want to surrender everything to Krishna, we have to hear about it in order to know how to do it. So this is why everything starts with hearing. But once we have heard, and we hear from many different sources, we hear Krishna's pastimes, and we also hear the process of devotional service, then we will choose a particular service, or you could say we will naturally gravitate towards a particular service that is similar to our taste. Now, we don't have to. A devotee is happy and willing to do any service for Krishna. Like the gopis were willing to go to hell for Krishna. So obviously that was not according to their taste, but they're willing to do anything for Krishna. But under normal circumstances, where we are a member of a devotee community, and there's so many services, so many options to do so many things, which service will we go towards? We will go towards that service which is natural to us. Like, there's a tendency, like in the flower department, there's more ladies, more matajis, and in the maybe pot washing department, there's more men. Why? Because different, according to our nature, we have a different taste. The men get bored with flowers, and the women get too tired with the heavy pots. Here, I'm meaning the temple, the big pots. So we all have a nature according to which we need to serve Krishna, and that taste is there. But as we make advancement, then on the stage of Raganuga Bhakti, one is serving Krishna according to one's particular taste, but not the taste of the physical body, not the varna or the ashrama of the physical body, but now the taste of the spiritual body, the Siddha Deha. So if in the spiritual body one is a manjari, one will not go running in the forest with Krishna's friends and the cows, but rather one will be making flower garlands for Krishna. Even though that devotee's material body, so to say, is not material anymore, but one's physical body might be of a strong man of 7 foot tall, but if, let's say, that person becomes a pure devotee, in their Siddha Deha, they may be making flower garlands and be a little 5-year-old girl in Vrindavan. So this is, their taste will change, because depending on which body one is serving the Lord. So both in terms of our present situation and in the highly advanced stage of Raganuga Bhakti, one is serving Krishna according to their taste. Otherwise, everyone would be doing the same service, but Krishna likes it this way. This is why he's made us different, because we all gradually move towards what is natural to us.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. That clarifies. So just to summarize my understanding, it means that what I understood from your explanation is that hearing cannot be replaced at any stage, because that's what you explained, right, during your course of talk, that sadhana bhakti should never be given up at any point. So it is not, one cannot replace each other. Is my understanding correct then? Okay.
Yes. No, absolutely. Hearing and chanting both. Also chanting, not just hearing and chanting. Those two things can never be replaced. So whatever service we do for Krishna, we're always chanting his holy names. The gopis are always singing about Krishna's activities. They're churning butter, they're dancing, but they're always singing about Krishna. And when they're singing, they're also hearing. So Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami actually mentioned this: hearing and chanting accompany all the other limbs, all the other processes, all the rasas of devotional service. And it all starts with hearing. However, once one is advanced in devotional service, one will develop a certain taste, a certain way of serving Krishna. At the same time, in spite of all odds, the devotee is willing to do whatever is needed for Krishna, anything that's needed for Krishna. So it was not Arjuna's taste to fight in the battle, because he was in the mode of goodness. He wanted to be in the forest. But he still fought because Krishna asked him to. And at the same time, it was his taste in the sense that it was his varna. He was still qualified. So Krishna didn't ask Sudama Brahman that you fight in the battle. Although Sudama Brahman would have been completely ready to do it had Krishna asked him. So that is the surrender part. The taste part does not contradict the surrender part. The devotee is fully surrendered to Krishna. But generally speaking, Krishna wants us to, or tells us to do what is our, tells us to do things according to our own nature, because that's what we're made for. And so just because Krishna tells us to do what is according to our own nature does not mean it's not pure devotional service. It is our nature, but it is also Krishna's instructions. And because we're doing what Krishna wants us to do, it's still pure devotional service. And if we're unwilling to act against our nature, if Krishna asks us to do so, then we're not doing pure devotional service. So at times, in exceptions, when Krishna asks us, then we have to do what he's asking us. But most of the time, he engages us according to our nature.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for elaborating. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the nice question. Mitravinda Mamatamayi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, all goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for a wonderful class, Prabhuji. So Prabhuji, I had some, question related to the rasas. Since you were talking about it, I remembered. Is it okay if I can ask it?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So Prabhuji, we read in teachings of Lord Chaitanya and many other places that Madhurya Ras is the highest, and Shant Ras, Dasya Ras, Sakhya, Vatsalya, everything is there, in Madhurya Ras, and Gopis are the high, like the one who are in Madhurya Ras. So how to understand that, Shant Ras, is also there in Gopis. So how does it, manifest there? How to understand that, Prabhuji?
Yes, if I understood your question correctly, and then just clarify if I have not. Shantaras basically is a rasa, means the appreciation, just an appreciation of the Lord's greatness. So the you could say the intensity of love of Shantaras, Dasyaras, Sakyaras, and Vatsalyaras is already there in the intensity of love in conjugal love, in Madhurya Ras. However, those in Madhurya Ras, they will not have feelings that are present in the devotee who is in Dasya Ras, who is looking at Krishna like a master, or in Shantaras, who is looking at God with just awe and reverence, just a distant reverence, like appreciating the power of God. So those specific mellows or rasas are not present, or you could say are hidden in Madhurya Ras, because the rasa that is there is one of conjugal love. And some of these rasas are mutually contradictory. Just like Mother Yashoda can never think of Krishna in a conjugal way. In the same way, Radharani cannot think of Krishna in a motherly way. If she does think of Krishna in a motherly way, then the conjugal rasa is spoiled. In the same way, if she thinks of Krishna in an awe and reverence way, like Shantaras, oh my God, awe and reverence, Krishna's the most powerful person, he's the light of the sun and the moon, then all of her rasa of sweetness towards her beloved will be disturbed, because Krishna's power will act as a disturbance to that. Knowledge of Krishna's power will act as a disturbance to that mood of affection. So when we say they're included, it means that the level of advancement, so to say, or the intensity of love is included, and these are sort of successive stages of intensity. But the feelings are different. The rasas are not, all the same. They are different. Did this answer your question, or did you have a different?
Yes, yeah. So Prabhuji, this is what I was trying to know. So what you let me also tell you what I understood. So what you said is that when it says that it includes the advancement level, not the mood actually. Am I right, Prabhuji?
Yeah, and not even advancement, because in some ways, all these devotees, Prabhupada says, are equally advanced. One cannot say that, that Chandravali is more advanced than your Mother Yashoda, or more advanced than Arjuna. So they're also equally advanced. One could just say in terms of the intimacy. That's what it is. Yeah, I was confusing. The intimacy is greater as these rasas progress. So, so conjugal love, Madhurya Ras, includes the intimacy of parental love. It's more intimate than that. So it already includes that degree of intimacy, and includes the intimacy of Sakya, Dasya, and Shanta. Shanta is the least intimate. But there's some intimacy there, that is the attraction to the power of the Lord, that is already included, or part of the intimacy, one small subset of the intimacy of conjugal love. So it's degrees of intimacy.
So degrees of intimacy is how we can understand, right, Prabhuji? Okay,
yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
because we cannot say higher or lower. We cannot say better or worse. It's all absolute. But still, Madhurya Ras is said to be the best. Why? Because it's the most intimate. The feelings are the most strong. Also, one's, so to say, one is just very, very close to the Lord.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. I liked how you said that in Shantaras, it is appreciation of the greatness of the Lord. It made me, it made the concept very clear for me. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. All
No
bless you.
problem. So it's like people, like recognition, for example. Sometimes you go and you see, when you see these astronomy videos, you see like millions of galaxies and millions of stars, and they show how Earth is just one little speck in these millions of things. And at that moment, you get this feeling in your heart, like, wow, like Krishna's so great. Like Krishna is just like amazing. And how great this universe is and how great Krishna must be. That is a feeling of Shantaras. So at that moment, you're not feeling, how should I serve Krishna? So that is on reverence in service. So one is on reverence and trying to serve Krishna. Shantaras is also on reverence. It's also being awed by the Lord's greatness, but it's just the awe part. There's no service attached to it. So there might be even prayers attached to it. One starts praying to the Lord, seeing how great this universe is. Or people like look up at the night sky and then they pray to God, please reveal yourself. So those are all feelings or activities in Shantaras.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Dhananjay Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji,
Hare
Dandavat
Krishna.
Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada. This is Jai Draupadi Devidasi.
Hare Krishna.
Very nice class, Prabhuji. I have a question regarding the rasas, malos. Prabhuji, as we have deities at home, sometime like when we dress them up, sometimes they do mischief, like what, how can I say? And we tell them, why you are doing this? Jaldi se karo na. So is this any offense I am doing, or like, and what bhav is this?
Yes.
Especially, yeah.
So actually, and I thought I put that quote inside, but somehow it didn't come. Prabhupada says that the way, or maybe I did read it, the way to develop Raganuga sadhana bhakti, particularly he mentions it, is worshipping Radha Krishna deities. I was amazed actually. He says that the way to develop Raganuga bhakti is to worship Radha Krishna deities. And in the course of worshipping the deities, the devotee, when you do it very nicely and with pure heart, the devotee gets a reciprocation in that service to Radha and Krishna. One starts to reciprocate with Radha and Krishna, they start to reciprocate with their devotee, and that's the beginning of Raganuga Bhakti. One starts to develop that relationship. So Raganuga Bhakti says, and also I think mercy of the devotee, there's another thing that he mentions specifically as, yeah, so I will go back to that quote, but Radha Krishna deities is mentioned. So the deities, now of course we understand Lord Chaitanya is a combination of Radha and Krishna. So worshipping Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, if you have Gaur-Nitai deities, that's also equally, or if not even better. So the point being that these things are all, these feelings and these things that happen, these are all just like reflections of that bhava that we're trying to develop. And they're genuine experiences, but they're very short. They're very, Krishna's like mercy. They're just drops of raindrops. We're not still experiencing the ocean. We're just experiencing some raindrops that come from the ocean, and that the mercy cloud, which is a devotee, they shower on us from time to time when seeing our sincerity. So the rain, where does it come from? It comes from the ocean. It's the ocean water that gets evaporated and then goes into the clouds, and then somewhere else it drops. So that same water is there. It is the same raga that is there, but we just get sometimes some drops. And that drops are not due to our qualification. Those drops are due to the causeless mercy of Krishna. So like sometimes we have just like an amazing mystical experience in Krishna consciousness, or we experience something genuine, and we may think, I'm not on that level, so this must not be true. No, it can be true, because Krishna gave some small experience. But then to make that experience permanent requires a lot of effort. Like the example of Narad Muni is so nice. Narad Muni very quickly sees Krishna face to face. Like, right, he goes to the forest, he starts meditating. He's this young boy, he's left everything in a dangerous jungle. He's so determined to see Krishna. He sees Krishna very quickly, and he sees him for just one moment. And then what happens? Krishna disappears. And then he really starts meditating. He really starts praying to the Lord to see him again. And then what does Krishna tell him? He says, in this lifetime, you won't see me again. Imagine how heavy that is. This small boy is meditating day and night in the forest, trying to see the Lord. And Krishna tells him that in this life, you will not see me again because you are not ready. You have to purify your existence more. And then in your next life, you're going to see me. To increase, he says, to increase your affection and increase your hankering for me, I will not show myself to you. So Narad Muni gets that experience, and then he loses the experience, and then he gets it permanently later on. So our situation is very much like Narad Muni. We get some experiences. Krishna does this to increase our hankering for him, and then he disappears.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And like one more thing, this thought comes in mind, like as we talk to Lord. So am I doing any mistake, or like I should think that or not?
Mistake, which one, what in regards
Like,
to what is the mistake?
Like as I said, we are servant of the Lord, and I say like jaldi karo na ye aise kyun, or so matlab order, giving order
Out of some
like,
relationship with the Lord,
yes,
you're telling him that, please.
yeah.
Yes. Well, Prabhupada does say in one place that the home deities become a member of the family. So they become a member of the family. So if that those words are done out of respect for the Lord, like in respect for the Lord, then those are okay. Like you know, like even the servant will sometimes like I've seen this in the case of my Guru Maharaj, his servants sometimes speak with him in a familiar way, but that's because they're his servant. They don't speak to him in a familiar way because they are his boss. But that exchange is one of affection of a servant to the master. So if your mood is one of the I'm your servant, and in that exchange of service, you're speaking that please hurry up, Lord, but not as the Lord's master, but as a servant, then it's okay. So the mood of maybe there, but Prabhupada again and again says that the one thing that the whole family, the deity is there to teach the whole family to respect the Lord. That the Lord he's the owner of the home. He's our Lord. He's our master. So that has to be their great reverence. But in that reverence, there can also be reciprocation and those feelings. I'm sure you know what I mean. Like, like the king has his minister, and the minister is the servant. But sometimes even the minister will chide the king. But the minister is not chiding in a way that's making him the master. They are doing it just out of a reciprocation, and that's a different type of reciprocation.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I have one more question. Is it okay?
Is Rupa Vilas Prabhu still there? I saw that his hand went up, and maybe then he had to leave. Okay, he's not here. Yes, Mataji, please.
Okay, so Prabhuji, like how we were talking about Bhava Bhakti and then Prema Bhakti, right? like bhava stage and then prema stage. So we like you discussed about Bharat Maharaj, that how he became animal, and then how you said that we can reach from bhava stage to prema stage, and it can take like millions of lifetimes. So like did Bharat Maharaj become animal, and then he immediately got prema stage, and I mean, does it justify him becoming animal because he got it immediately after that?
Yes. So, I mean, I was just saying that Bhaktivinoda Thakur in one place says that it can take, because it's something so rare. His point is, it's something so rare. We should not take it cheaply. But on that level, the devotee is directly reciprocating with Krishna. Krishna is directly reciprocating with the devotee. So that devotee is, no material estimation really works, and it's very personal how Krishna and the devotee move forward on this. But in the case of Bharat Maharaj, yes, exactly, that he was on the stage of bhava, it's described, and then he thought of the deer. He became a deer in his next life, and then in his next life he became Jad Bharat. Because he could remember his past lives, he was so convinced not to get distracted in that life that he acted as a dumb and foolish person, just so people would spit at him and ignore him, and so nothing would attract him in this material world. And when he became Jad Bharat, then he becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, and he then goes back to God, and after that, for sure, without a doubt. So in his case, yes, in just one lifetime, he was able to overcome whatever anartha he still had left. So this is this is a very nice example. As Jad Bharat, he became a pure devotee of the Lord, and gained perfection.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. I really appreciate it. Haribol.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Any other final questions?
Prabhuji, may I ask?
Yes.
One question? Yes. So, when you were talking about the Siddha Pranali, Prabhuji, it was mentioned that there are 11 elements of one's spiritual identity. Can you please share what those elements are, the 11 elements?
I don't have those on me, but I can post it on the group. I'll post those 11 elements. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, for sure. I'll do that. Yes. It's a good question. Any other questions? Okay, so it's 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock Eastern time, perfect time. So I'll stop here. We have 3 chapters left, and those have to do with Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So I think it will take us 2 weeks to do those, because 1 week for Bhava Bhakti, 1 week for Prema Bhakti. So please absorb yourself in Raganuga Bhakti this week, and next week, please be ready for Bhava Bhakti. So we're making advancement very quickly here.
Prabhuji, do we know the format of the exam?
Yes, I started working on it actually. I do know the format. I will give you a study guide shortly. I will give that to you. This is the first time I'm teaching this, so everything happens a bit last minute, but I will do it like we have the Gita exam. You'll get the questions in advance, and so Nectar Devotion, I don't think content-wise it is so difficult. Actually, Gita is more difficult. Nectar Devotion is more, we spent weeks and weeks and weeks on the 64 items of devotional service. So there's nothing very difficult. It's more just information, and very important information. So I'm not so worried about exam. I think all of you will do well. I will give you the papers. So.
And it will be in the first week of September, Prabhuji, after Labor Day, or?
So we did last time. Let's see. Yeah. So 2 more weeks, and then after that, I'll give you the exam. So starting, starting like, because then you need to do the homework after that. So like September 3rd, maybe starting September 3rd or 4th, I'll give you the exam, and then you'll have 10 days to complete it. So I would say the second week of September.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Done with pranams.
Dandavat Pranam Mataji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, are you not keeping well? You look so tired.
No, I still have some sinus infection. Yes, it's almost gone. So last week is really bad, as you all noticed. Now this week I was still struggling to speak because when you have the sinus, your nose always gets stuck.
Your eyes and all are looking so.
So it's just because of that. I almost recovered.
Okay. Take care,
Yes.
Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Dandavat.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.